Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you happen to be watching this at whatever time of day. Welcome to Lunch with a Life Coach. I'm Deanna, certified life coach, fitness educator, etc. And today, because we are kicking things off for 2025, it is January, and it is a time of year that a lot of folks set goals, talk about intentions for the year to come. And I really want to support you in helping you set up for success in the goal setting process and the intention setting process. And so, two things for you to think about today, folks, is when we set a goal, one of the challenges that can arise is that we've set a goal that actually relies on the behavior of somebody else. And in that case, what happens is that we actually don't really have full control over whether that goal comes to fruition or not. For example, sometimes somebody may say, I would like to set a goal of walking with my family every evening after dinner. And it's a lovely goal. And just think a little bit more about that. You actually don't have control over your family's behavior. Now, if you have a little one that you put in a buggy and you that's how you do it, then yes, you do have control over that. But if it relies on your partner, kids that are not an age that can be put in a buggy and walked with, it really then relies on somebody else to come along for you to hit that goal. So what I want you to think about is, and there are other goals that I've heard over the years, especially being in the fitness field. Some people might say something such as, I would like to get in shape so that everybody will be so impressed when I arrive at my high school reunion. And so I just want you to think about that type of goal. Do you, or the person that's setting that goal, do they actually have control over the response of other people? Well, no. And so that is where we really don't set ourselves up for success in the goal setting process. So something for you to be mindful of when you're setting that goal, because if we set a goal that's a little bit flawed, you're already sort of behind when you're trying to work towards that goal. It's really difficult to define the right next step in a goal achievement process if you don't have full control. So in the walking with family example, what I would suggest, if that's something, again, it's a lovely goal. It's spending time with your family. It's getting moving. It's getting outside. There's lots of great things within that goal. What I would love for you to think about is how can you set the goal that no matter what somebody else's decision, you can still achieve it. So simply to say, I'm going to walk for 15 minutes every day after dinner, and I'm going to invite my family along. That's great. That's a goal over which you have control. And then it's up to your family, of course, whether they want to come along or not. The second piece, lots of folks start to talk about their intentions. And an intention is different than a goal in a way that the goal is like to try to achieve something. Like I'm trying to be able to walk 5 kilometers or, do this thing every day. The intentionality component for a lot of folks, and if we look into like dictionary definitions, it's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about how folks use the idea of an intention. And in the intention setting process, folks might use the word that's really common right now is unbothered. And so, and I like that. I get the vibe behind it. But I want you to think about setting an intention in terms of how you want to feel. That's often what we talk about in intention. How do I want to feel? So there's an emotional connection to intention, which is great. And it can also be really difficult because how many people sometimes have difficulty identifying the emotion that they're feeling? They might say, I feel happy, I feel sad, I feel angry. Those are like our sort of level, sort of surface level emotions that we can identify without getting too Brene Brown on you and digging into what subcategories of the research showed. I just want you to think about how kind of loaded the idea of setting an intention might be because it's emotionally charged. All that is to say, I am going to invite you, if you're working on intention setting for this year, is to create clarity around what the intention means for you. And this is why I'm not going to pull out a dictionary definition or whatever the case is. So let's take unbothered. What does that mean for you? So if your intention is to be unbothered this year, that's a state, an emotional state in which you want to show up, right? That's for most folks, that's what they're describing. What does that mean? What does it look like when you are unbothered? And I want you to look at the other side. How do we know you're starting to come away from what is in alignment with what you're deciding in that intention? What does it look like to be bothered? So think about that. If you're not sure what it feels like, what does it look like? So maybe it looks like you're like feeling that you're pulling your hair out, that you're snapping at folks, that you're not showing up in the way that you want. And so I want you really to think about two things. What emotionally does it sound like, feel like, look like to be living in alignment with the state of intention you have set? And then the opposite, because think of it as a spectrum. If this is the unbothered over here, this is what I want to be, and this is bothered, what does each end look like? Because too often when we talk about emotion, this is where folks go, oh darn, I'm bothered. I am now pulling my hair out, I'm screaming, I'm yelling, I'm doing all the things. What we missed was the opportunity in the middle. When we're shifting away from what unbothered looks like, feels like, sounds like, and we're shifting towards the bothered. It is really difficult when we get to the other side of things, when we're, so overwhelmed. And I sort of said tongue-in-cheek, pulling your hair out, etc. That is not a nice state to be, right? And there's lots of reasons. Why do we get that way? Well, overwhelmed, not enough sleep, we didn't eat, we have too much on our plate, the mental load of life is too much. Like there's all of those things that we are overwhelmed and at a breaking point when we get to the bothered side of things. And so too often we're there before we even realize it. So here's the work for the goal setting is pretty easy, right? You can, create a goal over which you have control, full control, okay? And intention, I want you to look at what does the intention look like? This is what I want. And what does the other side look like? Okay, so you've got a couple pieces of homework today. It's what happens when your life coach is a professor, you get homework. And so what does unbothered, for example, or whatever the intention look like, sound like, feel like? What do you want to be? How are you living in alignment with that? What is the other side? What do you not want? And when you have identified both of those, I want you to then start to think about what are the red flags in the middle? Not red flags. Red flags were too far gone. What are the green flags? What are the things that are like, yep, I'm doing the things that'll help me be unbothered? What are the yellow flags? What are the yellow flags that are like, ooh, I notice, right? I notice that I'm like, oh, I'm shorter tempered, or I'm whatever the case is. Those are the yellow flags. And what will you do in a yellow flag moment? So when you're like, oh, and I know I feel those too, right? And I'm just like, oh my, and you know what? People asking me questions, the dogs are barking, the things, that, and there's so many things, and these people need something from me. And okay. And so all of that, ooh, yellow flag moment. What will you do? Step out of the room for a moment, or I don't know what the case is, right? Can you go outside for a moment? Can you shut off your screen and close your eyes for a moment? Can you make a cup of tea? Whatever the thing is, right? You want to know what the ideal state is, the, what's the opposite of ideal? The worst state, right? And then how do you let yourself know? How do you become aware you're moving from that ideal state and you're moving away from that? You're moving to the state you don't want. And then what are you going to do about it, right? So what will be my strategy? And so I know if you have like little ones and you're like, oh my gosh, like I can't just step outside. I have toddlers. I understand that. Here's what I want you to think about. The toddler bothered and unbothered, what does that look like? Unbothered is probably like doing the thing, laughing, playing, whatever. The bothered is screaming, raging, whatever. And so what do you do for the toddler in the moment, the screaming, the raging, etc.? Do you console? Do you hug? I want you to think about the same thing, right? If you're like, oh my gosh, I'm just sit down on the floor with your little ones, right? Pull them into your lap. I don't know if it means giving them a snack of like their favorite treat for a few minutes, if it means switching on a screen for a few minutes while they sit on your lap and you can all have a moment. That is totally 110% acceptable. because what's the outcome? The outcome is mom having a moment and then moving back to more of that unbothered state, versus it's so far gone that you then end up behaving in a way you don't want to, right? And you get overwhelmed and you're snappy, etc. So really thinking about those things as you're moving forward into this new year, if that's something that you're doing. And remember, it doesn't have to be the new year. It can be an intention for the week, an intention for the day, for a month, right? To really see how you want to show up and just notice how you've been showing up and what are the things that are missing. What are the gaps that you need help with, perhaps, or the things that you need to change to really help you move to where you want to be. As always, message me if you have topics you'd like to cover, if you have questions. You can visit my website, deannalangfordcoaching.com, message me directly, deanna@deannalangfordcoaching.com, cheering you on to move towards your best unbothered state this year. See you soon.